friends, and welcome to the CUInsight Network podcast. My name is Lauren Culp. I'm the president and CEO at CUInsight.com, and it's my job on this show to have conversations with the thought leaders who support the credit union community. There are so many of them, and together we can identify those issues that affect credit unions and talk about the best practices for all of our credit unions to learn from one another and improve our industry together. My guests on today's show are from PixelSpoke, Katie Stone, the CEO and co-owner at PixelSpoke, and Dave Drouin, the president and co-owner at PixelSpoke. Katie, Dave, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
This is our very first two-guest episode, so we are super excited about it. Most of us did not grow up thinking we'd get to work with credit unions. And in fact, many of us kind of accidentally stumbled upon credit unions. So I'm curious from each of you what you wanted to be growing up. And Katie, I'll toss it to you first.
Sure. Yeah, I never thought I'd work in the credit union space in any capacity. Growing up, I was really passionate about two things, sports and literature. So I always thought that I'd love to do some combination of those two things, maybe be like a sports writer. And actually, in college, I did have an internship with a sports magazine. They tried to turn that into a website. And then with the dot-com burst, it went under, sadly. And I had to pivot into another industry, which led me down a really interesting path that eventually led to PixelSpoke. But certainly didn't think credit unions were in my future back then.
Well, we're always happy to be in credit unions, even if it wasn't the plan initially. Dave, what about you? What did you want to be growing up?
Well, my grandmother did work at a credit union and my parents were members, but I didn't really give it much thought at the time. My dad was a jet engine mechanic in the Air Force. And so I wanted to be a fighter pilot and fly the kinds of planes that my dad worked on. But pretty fair to say I've deviated quite a bit from that original Top Gun style dream, but I do feel like Tom Cruise has me covered there.
That's amazing. Well, if there's ever a crossover, some sort of role that does both, that'd be awesome. I'm curious too. So PixelSpoke is a really unique organization, and we'll talk more about PixelSpoke. I'm curious what the journey was like for each of you to your roles today at PixelSpoke. So being CEO, Katie, and President Dave, I'm curious how this all came about. And I know the transition is relatively recent. So Dave, maybe I'll start with you on this one. What was the journey like for you into your current role today as president of PixelSpoke?
Yeah, well, I've been with PixelSpoke for over 17 years, and I was the creative director that entire time up until this January. As you mentioned, it's been pretty recent, but it's been a really cool journey. There's some notable bumps and highlights along the way, as you'd expect in that amount of time. But I can confidently say that over the course of all that time, I've learned so much more about running a business and collaborating with people than I ever did about being a designer or a creative director. So I actually feel like I've been unknowingly training for this role in co-ownership for a really long time.
Amazing. All right, Katie, what about you? What was the journey like to your role now as CEO at PixelSpoke?
Yeah, I guess just to step back a little bit, I worked for a long time in higher education prior to coming to PixelSpoke, and I knew I wanted something different when I decided to leave that industry. But I didn't know what that really looked like, except that I wanted to stay in some kind of operational role. And I was looking for a company that just had a really strong culture and really strong leadership. And I definitely found all three of those things with PixelSpoke. So I initially started as an operations manager, and I just love working in operations. I think that it really gives me a lens into the whole business. It allows me to use a lot of different strengths in a lot of different areas and be involved in a lot of different parts of the business. And probably my favorite thing is just being able to support our teammates in these more operational type roles. So that was a little over 5 years ago. And over time, I just worked more and more closely with our former CEO and founder, Cameron, and with Dave and a lot of the other leaders here at the company. And so, like Dave, moved into this CEO role back on January 1st when our founder, Cameron, decided to move into an advisory role. And it's just been really an amazing transition. And I hope we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that today. But just how PixelSpoke approached it, I think was a very seamless approach. And it's been just really exciting to partner with Dave and see where the company will go from here.
That is so cool. And yes, there's definitely time to talk about PixelSpoke. And actually, I'd love to know for those who don't know in the industry who PixelSpoke is, what you do. My guess is a lot of folks do. But just could you give us the elevator pitch about PixelSpoke and where you really add value for credit unions?
Yeah, I think that the simple way to put it is that at PixelSpoke, we build websites for credit unions. And I think beyond that, though, we really pride ourselves on being true partners for credit unions more than just vendors. And I think the way that we really hone in on that is through being really involved in the credit union industry. So a lot of folks might not know, but more than 90% of our clients are credit unions. Like you, Lauren, we host a podcast, a Remarkable Credit Union podcast. So that's credit union and marketing focused. We publish monthly articles with you all at CUInsight. We host quarterly client community roundtables where we have the opportunity to get all of our clients together and have talks about what's going on at their credit unions, share best practices, talk about common issues we're facing. We have 2 certified credit union development educators on the team. Dave will be taking that training coming up here in May, and I will be taking it in the fall. So we'll be up to 4 at that point. And we're just trying to stay really involved in the industry by attending conferences, presenting at conferences, leading webinars. So I guess this is just a long way to say that where I think we add a ton of value is that we really know credit unions well and are really focused on our credit union partners.
I'm just going to go straight to our core purpose. That's to promote the cooperative economy by elevating the digital presence of our clients. So in addition to what Katie just mentioned, I'll just say that our team, hands down, some of the most knowledgeable and empathetic human beings I've ever met. I mean, yes, we are delivering ROI and always getting better at that. And our team is really dedicated to listening, coming up with everybody win solutions for our clients. We also own our own mistakes. We learn from them and we move forward. And that's a pretty rare combination. I think our clients recognize that and find it really refreshing. So I'm probably biased, but PixelSpoke is a bit of a unicorn in that way.
Absolutely. Well, I think Katie, maybe you mentioned this, your identity as really true partners for credit unions. And we hear so many folks in the space who sometimes think of those vendor relationships as more transactional. You know, we pay you, you deliver us the service or the products. As a person in the space or an organization in the space that really is a true partner for credit unions, from the credit union side, how do you think they can really move past the vendor transactional mindset and build some true partnerships with their vendor partners?
Thank you so much for asking this question. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm going to put it back on us. I believe it's our job to reframe what a relationship with an agency or, a quote unquote vendor looks like. I'm wondering if the reason why so many credit unions come to us talking about vendors is because they've been repeatedly treated like just a line item in a spreadsheet rather than as human beings. And I think we have a real opportunity to change that dynamic. Just a quick story. We were at a conference dinner last fall with one of our clients, and they opened up about a pretty personal story regarding one of their children. And even one of their close teammates who was sitting across the table said, wow, I never even knew that about you. And I think that experience says a lot about the intentional efforts that our awesome team puts forth every day to create this environment where our clients feel like we care about them as human beings, even to the point of being a bit vulnerable and sharing something personal. I mean, it's pretty easy to fire a vendor, but it's a heck of a lot harder to fire a relationship. And our technology director, Fitz, is fond of saying it's all about relationships. And I think there's just a ton of wisdom in that.
I'm going to take it from a little bit of a different lens. Working in operational roles for quite some time, it's often been my job to find a vendor or a partner. So I've thought about this question a lot. And I think one of the big differences for me is I think of the vendor relationship as being very reactional, whereas a partnership relationship feels a lot more proactive. So with a partnership, you're getting a team that is really on the journey with you and looking at what's coming up ahead and helping you plan for that. So when I'm looking for a new partner, I'm typically looking for a few things. First of all, shared core values is really important and core values alignment. One of PixelSpoke's core values is everybody wins. And if there was one I would look for in a new partnership, that would be it. And then, kind of related to that, I'm always looking to see, is this potential partner taking the time to understand our unique challenges or points? I'm looking for someone that's going to ask a lot of questions and get curious about us. I have found that even if you think you know what you want, a good partner is going to ask about the why behind your request so that they can ensure that they're really addressing the core issue. And I'd love to share just a little analogy we use a lot at PixelSpoke. We talk about going to the doctor. And if you've got migraines, you can easily go to your doctor and say, hey, I've got migraines. I'd like you to give me a prescription for a painkiller. And a doctor can do that. But what a really good doctor is going to do is going to stop the conversation and say, hold on, I want to learn more about what's going on in your life. What are your stressors? What's your environment like? Tell me about your daily routine, and really try to get to the core issue and treat that rather than the symptoms. And I think about that a lot with partnership mentalities. I think a good partner is going to really ask those hard questions, try and get to the root issue, and make sure that that's what they're addressing and not just putting a Band-Aid on the hot topic at hand. And then I'll just throw a few other things out there that I look for. I really like to look for companies that have low turnover. If you've got a company that's got, a high retention rate and is keeping their employees around, that's probably someone that you're going to want to work with. I look at, are they offering you just kind of a generic product demo or a customized presentation? Are they really getting to our specific needs, or do they just have a one-size-fits-all product approach? And then finally, I look for flexibility. Are they shoehorning you into a multi-year contract that you can't get out of? If so, that's kind of a little yellow flag for me. I like to know that we've built enough trust in this partnership that if we needed to leave for some reason, we could. And typically, a partnership like that leads to a relationship that you don't want to leave. So those are a few things that I look for personally.
Those are really amazing. I think some of those things like retention of their own employees are maybe something you wouldn't think to ask a vendor right away, but those are just really good key indicators. I'm going to skip around a little bit here because you mentioned core values, and I want to talk a little bit more about core values. And it was really great to hear, you mentioned some of the ones at PixelSpoke. Having some core values for the credit union can be really powerful. I was just reading an article the other day, and they were talking about how you don't create core values, you discover them because they're already kind of baked into your culture. I'm really curious, especially during a time of leadership transitions, which there have been a ton of lately in the industry. How do you think organizational core values need to play into the ways that credit unions are making decisions?
I love talking about core values. At PixelSpoke, we take them really seriously, and they really guide all of our important decisions. They're a filter we use when we're faced with a difficult situations. We ask ourselves, what do our core values tell us to do in this situation? And we leaned into our core values a lot during our recent leadership transition. And I'll give you just a few examples. So one of our core values is curiosity with a purpose. So, in keeping that core value in mind, we interviewed leaders, I think at least 5 other really values driven companies that had been through a recent leadership transition to learn from their experiences. Another one of our core values is authenticity. So something else we did is we held one-on-ones with everyone on our team to get their thoughts, feelings, opinions about this transition and really take all of that feedback into consideration as we mapped out our plan. And then everybody wins. I think I mentioned that core value earlier, but we really were looking for an everybody wins solution to this leadership transition. And in those interviews, it really became clear that we'd all be more comfortable with an internal hire. But at the same time, PixelSpoke didn't have anyone that was really ready to take on that level of responsibility alone. I know I can speak for myself, I wasn't, which led to us to explore this co-leadership model. And I think we've really found it to be truly everybody wins. It seems like the right solution for both Dave and I, but also for the company, for our clients, and for the communities that our clients serve. It really has been the everybody wins solution. So, yeah, I just think that it's really important that credit unions keep those core values in mind. You mentioned, Lauren, that sometimes they're discovered. And while that can be the case, I think that intentional focus on them every single day is what really brings them to life in the organization, making them more than just a poster on the wall, really engaging with your core values on a daily basis is what makes them a driver in your business and allows them to be a filter when faced with tough decisions.
I love that. And thank you too for the color around the transition at PixelSpoke. Dave, anything you would add, whether that's kind of core value, ideology, or specific to the transition over at PixelSpoke?
Yeah. Well, I remember back in the day when we came up with our core values at PixelSpoke, and I appreciate that you mentioned the, discovering them, because that's truly what it felt like at the time is, kind of all of us gathering around. It's really important to not have this, sort of top down approach to coming up with what the core values are going to be. And we really all, the folks at the time sat around and kind of said, looking in the mirror, like, what are they really? And so it was a really cool process. We've updated a couple of bits and pieces along the way, but I think the main tenets of those have remained the same. And I actually feel like that's the reason that PixelSpoke exists and is thriving today. Katie mentioned it being them being a filter, and I think that we as an organization and credit unions as well, using them as a filter is actually really key for that consistency. We're, going through any leadership changes or changes within the organization, if you can come back to those core values, then I feel like the organization has a much better chance of not only staying on track, but thriving there.
That's amazing. One of the things that I also love talking about is sort of the cooperative economy out there, even beyond credit unions. And we see some credit unions kind of operate not as much as a cooperative, and some operate really, really strongly in that cooperative identity. I know I spent a number of years in Madison, Wisconsin, which seems to be co-op central. And there are just a ton of cooperatives out there. My favorite grocery store co-op, the Willie Street Co-op, there's an engineering co-op. I mean, they're everywhere out there. Do you think that there's anything that credit unions can really, really learn from their identity as cooperatives?
Sure. Yeah. And Madison does seem to come up a lot within the cooperative movement. I'm really looking forward to going there in a few months to do my DE training there. So that's exciting that you spent some time there also. I think, first of all, being a co-op is just a huge differentiator between credit unions and banks. I think many folks out there really want to do business with organizations that are doing things differently, who are motivated by their why and their core values, which we just talked about, rather than the, ubiquitous capitalist model of extraction just to satisfy shareholders. And then secondly, we've really witnessed one particular cooperative principle in action, and that's cooperation among cooperatives. So simply being a cooperative is a differentiator, but working side by side with other cooperatives, or in this case, other credit unions or other cooperative organizations, to do something that you couldn't otherwise accomplish alone, I think is a total game changer.
Yeah, Dave touched on the big thing I was going to talk about, which is cooperation amongst cooperatives. When you were asking this question, the first thing that came to mind to me were the 7 cooperative principles. And I just think that there's a really big opportunity for credit unions to use these as almost like a second set of guiding core values. So yeah, the big one that stands out to me, Dave already mentioned cooperation amongst cooperatives. We've come across many stories of credit unions partnering with other credit unions to support one another and to make significant impacts in their communities. And I'll just highlight one story. We're about to start working with a credit union called Marine Credit Union. They're a $1 billion credit union with branches in Wisconsin, go figure, Iowa, and Minnesota. And they do a ton of subprime lending for folks whose finances aren't in great shape. And what's really amazing is that the other credit unions in their area often refer people to Marine when they can't serve them. So I think that's just one really great example of cooperation among cooperatives, probably a little bit of concern for community in there as well. And I just think that there's a huge opportunity for credit unions to really infuse all of the 7 cooperative principles into their strategy and use that as, again, kind of a second set of guiding core values.
I love that. And it's so true. The cooperation, it can go so much further. And even sometimes, we see credit unions who the credit union down the street they view as competition. And I think there's a lot, I think Jim Nussel used the term co-opetition sometimes, but there's a lot of just true cooperation that can happen among credit unions. As we kind of look to the future, and I know things have transitioned at PixelSpoke relatively recently, but what's your new focus for the road ahead?
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to our core purpose around promoting the cooperative economy by elevating the digital presence of our clients. I feel like if we stick to that and focus on that, that's how we're going to make meaningful, positive change happen for our team and for our clients and the community at large. So,
Yeah, this is why Dave and I make such a great team. Dave's kind of the what, and I'll share a little bit of the how. I think the two big things kind of on our strategy roadmap, if you will, are working on our technology and continually improving that, really looking to provide really the most secure and best in class usability when it comes to your website CMS. And then secondly, really focusing on conversion optimization and leaning into data. There's so much data out there. And so just trying to mine that and present it and analyze it in a way that leads to really powerful recommendations for our credit union clients is the other big area of focus right now.
That is amazing. Well, so much cool work going on at PixelSpoke. I know we at CUInsight have been really happy and excited to be able to partner with PixelSpoke for a number of years. You all do some incredible work, so it's really an honor getting to talk to both of you. As we wrap up the show, I always like to have fun with some rapid fire questions to let our listeners get to know you a little bit better personally. So we say the questions are rapid, but your answers don't have to be. So if you're both ready, we will dive in.
all right.
Do it.
Okay, number one, I'm going to go to you first, Katie. Who is someone in your life that was a great leader and what makes them so great?
All right. So not to get too sappy, but one of the great things about working at an employee-owned organization is that I am surrounded by great leaders every day. So I would say the team here at PixelSpoke with an employee-owned cooperative, ownership thinking is very tangible. And what makes my coworkers such great leaders, more than anything else, I think, is that really embracing the everybody wins mentality, which means that we're looking for wins for our clients, our coworkers, our companies, and the communities that we live in and serve.
I like it. Okay, Dave, what about you? Who is someone in your life that was a great leader and why?
All right. I will first second what Katie said about our team and the sappiness. So, my mother is a great leader. She leads with her heart, with empathy. And I've just, throughout my entire life, I've watched her live according to her values. So, yeah, I should probably call her as soon as we finish this conversation and tell her that.
I love it. We'll have to send her the episode too. She can get a shout out. All right. Number two, Dave, I'm going to you first. If you're going to splurge on something, say you want to treat yourself, what is something you might invest a little bit into, whether that's time or resources?
Good question. All right. Maybe a funny answer. I think anything that allows me to do something else that I'd rather be doing. So, for example, I used to change my own oil in my truck because I'm kind of thrifty. But I'm realizing that there's some tasks that I really don't want to do anymore. And being cozy and reading a book sounds a heck of a lot more enticing than crawling around under my truck in the rain with oil dripping all over me. So now I have the privilege of investing more time on my couch and less time under my truck. So I'm investing in doing that.
I like it. Okay, Katie, what about you? What might you invest a little bit into if you want to treat yourself?
All right. So for me, it's probably either a really fancy dinner or something for my house. I'm on a real like DIY kick right now. So maybe like a new tool for my garage or splurging on the materials for some kind of small renovation project.
Okay, that's a great answer. All right, next question. This one, I'm going to go to Dave again first. Random question. If you travel for work, a lot of us do. I know you both mentioned some conferences that you get out to. What's a city that you're most excited to visit? When you see it on the agenda, what city are you excited to visit?
And good question. I'm going to go general and then specific. I'm most excited to visit a city where I actually want to stick around even after the conference. So recently that was Vancouver, BC. Katie and I were up there for the B Corp Champions Retreat. And oh, the food, man. I have a lifetime of delicious food calling my name in that town, and the landscape is really stunning too.
I like it. All right, Katie, what about you?
Sure. Well, first of all, I just love traveling, period. So any city is a good city, particularly if I haven't been to it before. I love a good reason to visit a new city. But on the horizon, I will be going to Las Vegas in July. And Las Vegas is one of my favorite cities in the world. I know that's kind of a polarizing opinion, but I just love the excitement there. So I'm looking forward to going and probably extending my trip a little bit to spend some time at the blackjack table.
Okay, that's fun. I like it. All right. And Katie, I'm going to start with you first for my next question. What's a book you think everyone should read?
Oh man, I love reading. I read a ton of books, so this is a hard one to choose. But one of the more impactful books that I've ever read was Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. I'd highly recommend it. I think it was also maybe a movie, which I've not watched, but just really powerful writing and compelling work there. So that would be my plug.
I like it. What about you, Dave?
All right, I'm going deep. So I would say My Grandmother's Hands by Resmaa Menakem. It's definitely not an easy book to read and requires a lot of the reader, but I feel like it has the potential to change how at least I view the world and operate in it. So that one, and then I think especially pertinent to this audience, I'd recommend Banking on a Human Scale by George Hofheimer.
Okay, I like it. We're going to link to all of these books here. What has been your best hack for creating balance and integration between your work life and what I always like to call your life?
For me, the best thing I can do is have a hard cutoff time at the end of the day. I always like to tell people I'm totally open to working long days if I need to, but I prefer to do that on the front end of my day. So getting like an early start, but really being consistent with the end of my day really helps me create better boundaries, especially in a remote working environment between my work life and my life.
I think especially in my new role here with Katie, I've been working on that exact question quite a bit. Like Katie mentioned, we work full time at home now. So for me, it's like come up with a concise list of priorities for the day, work on them, make sure the team is being supported, and then literally shutting the door to my office at the end of the day. I used to have this bicycle commute downtown that created this, separation between work and home. So now I have to very intentionally and physically create that at my home. It helps me be more present while I'm working and then also when I'm not in my life.
I like it. Those are both great answers. Well, we're going to link to everything we talked about today in the show notes. We're also going to link to PixelSpoke's podcast, The Remarkable Credit Union. So I'm excited to get that out there. And my last question for both of you is to ask you if you have any final thoughts you'd like to share or final asks of our listeners.
Yeah. So, I've been thinking about this a lot. I feel like there are folks out there that are just really hungry for feeling and actually being empowered. So I think we have this huge opportunity as cooperatives to offer that empowerment and then model how we can do business differently, especially around something as fundamental as finance.
Yeah, I think I'd love to just kind of tie it back to the beginning of our conversation when you asked us about, what we wanted to be when we grew up. I never envisioned my career would in any way intersect with credit unions or cooperatives for that matter. But I think I'd love to just leave us by saying that I'm so inspired every day by the incredible work that credit unions do. And just to have that opportunity to work with really values aligned folks every day truly is a privilege. And I appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to be on the show today. It was so great getting to connect with you both.
Thanks for having us.
Likewise. Thanks for having us, Lauren.
Well, stay well. Hopefully, I will get to run into one or both of you in person sometime soon. And thanks to all of our listeners today for tuning into the CUInsight Network podcast. And we will be back again next time.